how can I create more of a culture how can I be more intentional at creating a culture where both are predominant, truth and grace. And also two other components again that I mentioned earlier with the function of time, because and what's interesting is just in my own personal emotional growth journey, how how necessary and important have I needed time. You know, for me, and probably a function of it too, is my emotional maturity level, my emotional intelligence level at this point in my growth journey, being that it's still, I still have a lot of work to do, a lot of growth to happen. It may take me longer probably than maybe the next person, because I still feel like, just even being a few years into this journey, I still feel like I'm very new in this journey. And so it still takes me a bit of time to process my emotions. So, a few thoughts for my takeaways today, lessons learned, my journey, my growth, my emotional growth journey. So, a few things, and again, this is from Henry Cloud, Dr. Henry Cloud, who has written the book Boundaries and the book Changes That Heal. He talks about a few characteristics that need to be present for, essentially true, lasting growth and change to happen: truth, grace, and time, and one more, community. So, really, four critical components to the growth and change process. And I talked about this a little bit the last time, but I want to elaborate on, on a couple of them. So, you can't, you don't want to have an environment where it's all truth and no grace, because an environment of all truth and no grace, it can be a turnoff. It can create depression, bitterness, anger, and rebellion if it's all truth without grace. In an environment where it's all grace and no truth, you've got an environment that is very permissive and a license to do maybe behavior or practices that are not productive, because it's all grace without any truth. Truth provides direction, truth provides left and right limits, truth provides guidelines and direction, where again, grace does not. So, to balance out truth, you need grace. To balance out grace, you need truth. So, applying that to my own personal growth journey in business, in leadership, in positions of influence, is how can I create more of a culture, how can I be more intentional at creating a culture where both are predominant, truth and grace. And also two other components again that I mentioned earlier, with the function of time, because and what's interesting is just in my own personal emotional growth journey, how how necessary and important have I needed time. You know, for me, and probably a function of it too, is my emotional maturity level, my emotional intelligence level at this point in my growth journey, being that it's still, I still have a lot of work to do, a lot of growth to happen. It may take me longer probably than maybe the next person, because I still feel like, just even being a few years into this journey, I still feel like I'm very new in this journey, and so it still takes me a bit of time to process my emotions. Man, how am I just to, in fact, tonight is really interesting. Had some new information, kind of presented to me some new things to think about, and I kind of had an emotional response. Not I didn't get emotional or anything like that, but I was feeling some kind of way. And so thankfully, based on where I'm at in my growth journey, I had the presence of mind and the self-awareness to pause, reflect, and ask myself, okay, what emotions am I feeling? Just even asking myself that question is a big step, I will tell you, because in the past, any type of new information that could be potentially overwhelming in the past would immediately shut me down based on, I don't know, but my wiring, how I'm wired, or I've got to figure that out, why that even happens. Why is it that new information or lots of information has the potential to overwhelm me? And then why is my has been my go-to response be to just shut down and avoid? Why is that? So that's some emotional work I got to do. Thankfully, I didn't do that tonight. I remained present emotionally. I remained aware, and I asked myself that question. Okay, what am I feeling? What are the emotions I'm feeling now? Again, what I should have done and still need to do is I need to journal and vomit all the emotions that I was feeling tonight, and then really allow myself to feel those emotions, and then do an analysis and assessment of, okay, why was I feeling a little anxious? Why was I feeling a little overwhelmed? Why was I feeling a little excited? It was kind of a mix of some really interesting emotions, and really process those so that, again, for all of us entrepreneurs, so that it doesn't negatively impact performance, even with potentially positive emotions. Again, if I get too many emotions all jammed up in one spot, again, my default has been to just shut down and avoid. And again, I don't want to continue that habit. I want to create new emotional habits, new emotional battle drills. So anyway, realizing and valuing the importance of time, that I just need to be continue to be intentional, continue to grow in my self-awareness, and again get God involved in this emotional growth journey, and ask him to shed some light on, okay, help me better understand and unpack these emotions, so that, again, I want God involved in my emotional growth journey. And so realizing that there's that time component, but I feel like as I get better at this stuff, I will get faster, but still understanding that regardless of how emotionally mature I get and emotionally intelligent I get, I'm sure, just dealing with emotions, period, still takes time and is a process. And what I've also realized is that it comes in sometimes the emotions come in waves and can come at the most random of times. So that's an area and aspect of our emotional growth journey and my emotional growth journey that I'm not able to control. Okay, well, I need to feel this at this time, at this day, and it's going to last this long. Again, at least this stage of my game, I am not at that point. And I don't know that really anybody is in a place where they can control when and how long the emotions come and how long they stay and all that stuff. And then the other thing too is the other dynamic is that God created us for a relationship. Think about, man, as long as music has been around, think about as long as writing has been around, think about poetry, think about songs. How many songs are about relationships? How many poems are about relationships? Like, man, as for, and again, I'm not a history buff. I know, just from a biblical perspective, God wired us for relationships. He And it's just interesting that culture and society seems to back that up, right? So the best, to to be able to create a tribe and an inner circle and a community where processing processing emotions and communicating and discussing our emotions in an environment that is safe, that has truth and grace, I feel like also helps tremendously in one's emotional growth journey. I'll tell you, for me, I have, been a part of creating a tribe and a community. So one, obviously, with my awesome wife, but also I've got some other, friends, colleagues that it has been such a tremendous blessing to be able to discuss and converse about my growth journey with, and encourage and inspire others in my circle to also grow on their emotional growth journey. And just being able to have these conversations with like-minded, growth-minded people in this area specifically has been a game changer. So it's been really neat to confirm the stuff I'm reading in, again, Henry Cloud's books, Boundaries and Changes That Heal, because it is absolutely confirming and affirming my own emotional growth journey. So be intentional with that. Be intentional with those areas. Kind of do an assessment. How are you doing in the truth department? I know that's I've got tons of grace. I've had to really work on the truth department, um, because I guess I err to grace, and I found that folks kind of fall into one of those two camps. Well, I'm more, I'm truth, and everyone knows that truth is more important. Well, and it's interesting, again, from a biblical perspective, the number of different spots where God says that, he puts those two together, truth and grace, not one or the other, but truth and grace. Excuse me. And again, from a biblical excuse me, a biblical perspective is 1 Corinthians 13. It talks about at the very end, and of these different qualities that he mentions, that God mentions in the Bible there, that of all these qualities, faith, hope, and love, the greatest of these is love. So are we implementing truth? Are we implementing grace, time, and community within the framework of love? In a cheesy quote, honey attracts more than vinegar, or attracts more effectively. I don't remember exactly how that quote goes, but again, it is, are we creating a culture of love? Because in that environment, I feel like people respond. I know I respond better in an environment, in a culture of love, versus one where truth dominates, or even where grace dominates. Can we put both of those together in the context of love, and the context, in the context of time and in community? Can all that be packaged and wrapped in love? Because I feel like with all those operating together, so really five components: truth, grace, community, truth, grace, time, community, and love. True, we can be in that environment from our true self, not our false self. Cloud talks about that as well, because if we are presenting and operating from our false self, change can't happen. And it was fascinating to hear him talk about that. And it's true when I'm trying to portray, again, as a recovering people pleaser addict, when I'm trying to portray a certain image, again, and a false image, then my false image will prevent truth and grace from me being able to assimilate truth and grace, because my false self is operating in kind of the security guard up front, not allowing that truth and grace to get into my true self, and then ultimately change won't happen. So when you can, again, operate from a proper environment of truth, grace, time, community, in that context of love, that creates a safe environment for our true self to realize, okay, man, it's safe out here to really, with all our scars and failings and shortcomings and all that kind of stuff, it's safe to bring that stuff out in the open in that environment of love where true lasting change can happen. But if you think about it, how many environments do you truly feel safe in that is truly an environment and culture of love, where the folks in that tribe, in that community, in that circle genuinely care about you as a person, are not judgmental, still have high standards of truth. I mean, and those kind of environments, which are rare in my opinion, have really challenged me to want to grow and be a better person, and be a better man and husband and father. So I want to really be cognizant and aware of, in those, in my business, my entrepreneurial endeavors, in again the different circles and that I operate in, homeschooling and business and these different areas. And so my military buddies that I still am connected with, can I be an example of truth, grace, time, community, and love to help inspire growth and change in those around me, so that we can change the world by changing your world, by changing you.